And welcome to the Shuffle Squad channel here on YouTube. We are going to be covering the World's 2024 recap here on everything that went down, even some controversial things, unfortunately, that did go down, as well as how it all panned out for the TCG. We are going to look at all of the decks, talk about some interesting predictions that we had beforehand, as well as what actually happened, so you can get the gist or the spark notes, what have you, on the World Championship for Masters TCG. And who better than to have on this episode than my good friend LDF. LDF, how's it going?
I'm good, man. Just been cruising, making a lot of content. I did a watch party for the World Championship Finals, which was pretty exciting. So,
Yeah.
been really enjoying just kind of grinding out content here, and it was really exciting to watch the World Championships this weekend.
Yeah, it definitely was. It was very exciting all the way through. I had to go back and watch some reruns. I
Yeah, same.
unfortunately was not attending because I was at a wedding, but the wedding was awesome and I did enjoy it. And I did enjoy watching all of the new decks with Shrouded Fable cards in them as well. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the meta breakdown here. And LEF, I know you and I kind of like gasped at it. We saw that obviously we had Reggie Drago up there, right? We love Reggie Drago. You and I are both huge Reggie Drago fans, so we had it
Yeah.
up at the top. And then our secondary one, I think it was Charizard, right? We had Charizard, and
Yep.
then Lugia. Now
Lugia.
Lugia was a surprise for me in the top three. I did not think that Lugia would be top three for sure. What are your thoughts on the top three, LDF?
So I knew Drago was BDIF going into the tournament. I knew a lot of like my friends who were going to the tournament. My friend
Mm-hmm.
Anil, my friend Dan, they were all on Drago. Like I knew everyone was like pretty sold on Drago. Even
Yeah.
some of the big players were playing Reggie Drago. Like I was
Yeah.
surprised to see like some of the Australian players on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, Drago just BDIF. It just kind of beats everything. And then of course Charizard didn't surprise me that much. It actually didn't do as well as everyone expected. It was played, and obviously some of the big Zard players like Pedro Pertusi, William, and Tord were all on Charizard. But Zard definitely didn't have the best showing this weekend. And that really is just because it got bullied pretty badly by all the Reggie Drago. When all the top players are playing Drago, it was really tough. Lugia wasn't surprising. I knew Lugia was going to be popular. And in fact, a lot of the Drago lists were actually trying to beat Lugia. They were all playing Spiritomb and Temple of Sinnoh to counter Lugia.
Right, right. And that was a one thing that I did notice a lot. And I even noticed that, Guardy kind of fell off. Again, we talk about the Australian players, huge on Guardy. A lot of the Shuffle squad is also pretty big on Guardy, too. Shout out to you, Josh Frink. But as far as that goes, I mean, Guardy just didn't show up in numbers like we thought. And Guardy was a great play into Lugia. So you'd think that since Lugia is a top three deck, those Guardy numbers would convert into the day twos. But unfortunately, Guardy fell a little short at this event for sure. We did have a victorious deck that came through that was a big surprise to me, and that was obviously Iron Thorns EX, which was what pile drove the end of the top eight here for sure, and won the whole thing. But Iron Thorns was out there in numbers too. There were a lot of players and a lot of teams that were just on it because it does shut down the big decks. It shuts down Regidrago's abilities. It shuts down Charizard's abilities. And we had another lightning deck that showed up a little bit, and that was Miraidon. I mean, Jesse Parker had a 13-0 run before getting bumped out of the tournament. And Miraidon is a deck that was on a couple of people's radar from a few online events. So what are your takes on the two lightning decks here?
Yeah, I wasn't surprised to see Miraidon do well. That was a deck going into the World Championships like the week before. I was like, this deck's pretty good right now. It beats Gardevoir, farms Lugia, and it's not bad into Drago, especially if you can get that turn one donk on an Ogerpon or a Regidrago V with Miraidon. The Thorns deck did surprise me a little bit. I actually knew it was going to see a bit of play this weekend because it's kind of like, it's not a very simple deck, but it's a deck people would just want to play because it just kind of does what it does, just shuts the opponent down. You don't really have to do anything. You just are given the cards that you're dealt, and you just play with what you got. And Thorns is a deck that is very hard to beat sometimes when your deck can't function at 100%. Like Drago can't use Legacy Star, Ogerpon, Lugia can't do anything at all. Gardevoir has to be very careful with managing their resources. Like, it's a really like big, intensive, resource-heavy deck. It's a very grindy deck to play against. And actually, interestingly, Fernando's list playing the Crushing Hammers and the Pokemon Catchers, a very coin flip heavy deck, and actually playing a Prime Catcher over Legacy Energy as the ace bet was the big surprise for me. So I think Thorns winning really, I think, is one of the biggest surprises of the tournament. Maybe not the biggest surprise. I think that's what came in second place. But Thorns winning was something that I think is going to be not considered a meme, but I think a lot of people are just going to be looking at this role as like, wow, Iron Thorns, like a quad deck, won the tournament. Like Pokemon are going to be selling this deck in stores, and it's just going to be 4 Iron Thorns, which is kind of crazy. So definitely a bizarre deck to see win the tournament, but I'm not surprised because, like you said, it was popular. I mean, I think it was on the day one graphic, which was crazy. It was on,
It was in there. I mean, well, you have to think that there hasn't been. I don't think there's really been a quad Pokemon deck in a World Championship Finals in forever.
No, I don't even know if there's ever been one. I know there was like the closest stat I've seen was the Teraki and Mewtwo Darkrai deck. From 2011 or 2012, which literally played 7 Pokemon. But I don't think we've ever just seen a deck where literally the only Pokemon is the 4 copies of the big basic. There has been quad decks see success, like Stonejourner saw a bit of success back in the day. But yeah, like a pure quad deck like has never done this well. I think the closest thing this deck is compared to is probably the Galarian Weezing deck.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Galarian Weezing, just setting that up and making sure that no abilities happen anywhere.
Yep, which is better than Thorns.
It was so good. I missed that deck, but it was an evolution deck, so you still had other Pokemon that you had to get into and things of that nature. This is just straight quad, big basic Pokemon. Doesn't hit for a whole lot of damage, disrupts your opponent. It kind of is reminiscent of back in Sun and Moon where you had the Sylveon Gardevoir Tag Team EX. That was a phenomenal card for the short-lived time that it had. Obviously, it got pushed out of the meta by the other big basics. But, here we see one just taking down an entire tournament. And again, looking back at the top 3 decks that were showing, it was great into all 3 of those decks for sure. So there's no surprise there that it was able to do as well as it did and as many numbers as it did. But again, going back to something you mentioned, the other surprise on the other side of finals was Roaring Moon. Now, nobody really had this on their radar. I know a couple of people were testing it out. I was testing it out. Actually, if you go back on the Shuffle Squad's channel, one of my live versions for Okidogi EX, almost 2/3 of the way in, I'm like, okay, maybe this should just be a Roaring Moon deck, and I switched it. The deck ran phenomenally, and I really see why that a deck like this could do well in our meta. The meta shift was kind of going in blind. We had been testing it for a little while. We kind of knew what Shrouded Fable cards were coming out. We all expected Charizard. We all expected Regidrago. It was a real thing. We saw all the Japanese tournaments online. If you're paying attention to competitive Pokemon TCG, you knew that was another thing. And, this deck just did well. I mean, it has single prize attackers. It's aggressive enough. It's got all the tools that it needs. I was really surprised about this deck. What do you think about the list when we were looking back and taking a look at the list itself? What do you think about this thing?
I think the list is really strong. I tried it out, did a video on it, and it's like it goes super fast. 4 catchers, 4 shoes, 4 Pokestop, just goes really quick. It draws through a lot of the deck. I think one of the big things with the deck was the amount of times this tournament people were probably choosing to go first. This gives this deck a major advantage because obviously with all the Regidrago going around, a lot of the time going in blind, your opponent would probably opt to go first. Or, if you're just planning a Strago, they're just going to go first anyways. And this gives you a huge advantage. Moon loves to go second. And being able to just go turn 1 knockout, basically, a lot of the time you win the game if you just take the first 2 prizes with this deck due to the aggressive nature. There wasn't really any single prize decks out there. Like Gardevoir was maybe the only one you had to worry about. Maybe like Ancient Box, but Ancient Box was not really that popular. Gardevoir maybe could be a bad matchup, but even then, I think you can still beat Gardevoir. You have the aggressiveness of Moon. You have the Baby Moon, which helps offset the prize trade. Gardevoir is weak to Dark. So it's a pretty close matchup, I would still imagine. So I'm not surprised to see this deck do so well. I thought it was actually going to win the tournament because in my head, I was like, this deck probably beats Quad Thorns because you have so much energy acceleration. You kind of cancel out the Crushing Hammers, and you have Petrunt, which can actually end up being a really good late game attacker in the matchup. But unfortunately, yeah, we weren't able to see the Moon deck win. But I do think that Moon was a great meta call for this tournament. Will it be good going forward? I think so. We'll have to see if any Charizard get more popular. Charizard might be the one thing standing in this deck's way. But I do think that this Turbo Moon deck is a very good deck in the World Championships, and I'm not surprised to see it do so well if somebody was able to do, able to play it and have such a good performance. Because even though not a lot of people expected it, I think that the deck definitely, with the way the meta was going, I think it was very primed to have a good run.
Yes, exactly. And you talk about surprises and talk about what we expected here. We have to talk about our big black lizard friend in Charizard EX here, the terrestrialized version. And we know that its Infernal Rain was getting pretty scary with all those Dusclops, but then when we turn and look at what did well at this World Championship, we look at Tord Redcliffe's version. Now, Tord has always been known for being an innovative deck builder at any event that he's in attendance at. And this was definitely right on par with everything that Tord does, because he took what everyone expected a Charizard list to be. And fun little tidbit fact, Tord had no access to Shrouded Fable cards before the event. It literally had to source Shrouded Fable cards, knew that they were, a real thing and obviously could proxy, but was playing this format for almost a month leading up to the tournament. And it definitely shows, because when we look at Tord's Charizard list, there's some innovation there that I even went, wow, that's actually really genius. There was no Dusknoir at all in this list. And I think that it was really necessary, because Dusknoir, you don't want to give away prizes as often in this meta with, decks so easily able to take multiple prize turns. Exactly. You don't want to go that far behind. Disruption isn't a thing as much anymore because Pheasantipity is a card. And when you're trying to target somebody's Pheasantipity and potentially an opposing Pidgeot EX, we lose some consistency there, and especially when you're giving up your own prize cards. So I think what Tord did with the Charizard list was really innovative. We saw the Raylor, hopefully that's how you pronounce it in there, that is preventing any sort of effects done to the bench. It's an evolution. He also played TM Evolution and a Pidgeot or a Pidgeotto in the deck, which was really cool. And I thought that was great. Still kept the Bibarel in there, still kept the Cleffa, even though it's a 30 hit point Pokemon. Drawing cards is good. And Tord knew that. The biggest innovation, I think, and I love this part of the deck, is the Squovit, because it definitely flipped the Iron Thorns matchup on its head, because when you're just able to see so many cards, inevitably you're going to draw into two fire energies and just take it down. Now, Crushing Hammers could be pretty detrimental in a Charizard matchup for sure, but just knowing that his abilities were going to be shut off and what other ways can I get around doing that, the innovation was just wild to me. What are your takes on this Charizard deck, LDF?
Yeah, I think this is a pretty solid Charizard list. There's a lot going on in the deck. Like you said, the Rabsca being very, very good against Drago, because usually you'll play Charizard, you go second against Drago, you want to go for that turn 1 TM Evolution and put the Rabsca down so you dodge the effect of Dragapult turn 2, which is really, really strong. And then also you do that Pidgeotto. The one thing I actually like about Pidgeotto is it actually helps your Gardevoir matchup, because now you have an even bulkier Pokemon on the bench under the Pidgeot, so your Pidgeot can't get devoted as easily now, which I think is a really genius concept. So I'm sure Tord hit a few Gardevoirs and he ended up TM Evoing out the Pidgeotto quite a bit. Yeah, like you said, the deck plays so much draw with the Bibarel, the Fez, the Squovit, the Pidgeot, the Cleffa. Tord just does like to play the game, and Tord's deck definitely does play the game with the amount of draw he has in the deck. One other thing I wanted to note, he played a Thornton in the deck and a double Turbo Energy. So I think the logic behind the Thornton, actually looking at a lot of the Charizard lists in the World Championships Day 2, a lot of them were playing Thornton. And I think the idea of Thornton is it allowed you to remove Pheasantipity off the board. Which was really good. You get rid of that 2-prize liability, you get rid of Luminion, but it also allows you to use Radiant Charizard multiple times in the game. So the way Tord's deck was actually built, it looks like he was trying to lean more into the Radiant Charizard as one of the main attackers in the deck. Since he does have that double turbo, you can go Charizard EX, 2 fire on your active Charizard, and then you can put 1 on a Radiant Charizard, and then you can double turbo it. Because looking at the meta, especially with all the big basics, the Ogre Pawns, like even against Regidrago, being able to use Radiant Charizard is really good because it's a one prizer. You can't lose it to Ogerpon like you can Charizard EX, and you can trade it into Regidrago by going Rabska and then Radiant Charizard. And then you can just go counter catcher boss, bring up Ogerpon, Mew, Fez on the bench, Radiant Charizard, knock it out. And it really offsets the prize trade. So I think that the Radiant Charizard Thornton combo is genius. I think it's going to be a staple in Charizard going forward, as long as we see these big basics continue to see play. Probably would be really good into the Turbo Moon deck. That saw a lot of play this weekend too. Towards List definitely is very innovative. Is it the best way to play Charizard? It might be, because there's so much going on, but I think that the deck has answers to every big deck in the format.
Absolutely, and I do applaud Tord again for deck building skills. There was a couple of Charizard Dusknoirs that did well, but I really think that this is the best Charizard list I saw coming out of the event. So
I guess like the one thing with Tord's list is it's going to be a lot worse in a control than the Dusknoir build.
Yes.
So if you expect a lot of stall and control in your area, probably don't play Tord's list, because I don't know if Tord can beat those decks, unfortunately. But for everything else that's not stall and control, Tord's list is optimized to beat it, especially Regidrago, which is easily Charizard's worst matchup by far. Without the Rabska.
Exactly. Or maybe throw an extra canceling clone in there with something else, and maybe that gives you a chance. That's right. That would be bad for Thorns too. I know that card is a thorn in my side, pun intended,
literally,
when you're playing Thorn. So let's talk about some decks that didn't show up that we kind of assumed would. Obviously, the first one, and we've always seen this come out of the woodwork, regardless of how bad the format is for the deck, and that is a Lost Zone deck. We didn't see anybody selecting many flowers at the beginning of this, and I think that was in part to Kyurem being a card, and obviously there's so many other decks. We saw all the Guardy decks were kind of countering that with the Flutter Mains and the Clef Keys. There was multiple prize turns that could have been taken with Drago, but there's always a Lost Zone box deck. There's always at least one that does well, and we didn't see a single one here, which
so surprising.
I know, it was crazy. And for everybody that hates Lost Box or hates playing Lost Box now, I mean, I could only imagine you standing and applauding when you're looking down through like the top 128 and not seeing a single comfy deck at all. What do you think about this?
Yeah, so there was one Lost Box in day 2, and it was Sablezard. It wasn't even Turbo, it was Sablezard. But yeah, like you said, I was actually really shocked to not see that much Lost Box in the tournament. And I mean, I didn't know if the deck was actually good. Obviously, it has a really bad Regidrago matchup. As somebody who really likes Lost Box right now, I've done a lot of testing and innovation with the deck, but I just can't figure out how to beat Regidrago. That matchup is abysmal. Even playing the Hedrick build, like the Hedrick build still felt like it was a little bit too weak against it. So I'm not surprised to see the deck not be popular, but to see the deck flop was the biggest surprise, because ultimately all the top decks, the Miraidon, the Thorns, the Roaring Moon, even the Charizards, even to a degree Gardevoir, which I still think is like at least a 50-50. I'm surprised to see Lost Box just not do as well this tournament, because I really thought that it wasn't the worst meta call. You just have to dodge Regidrago. But I guess when there's like 30% Drago in day 2, I'm not surprised to see it, because like the deck, like I said, just can't beat Regidrago. But honestly, the deck still is okay into most of the other meta decks. If you're not playing against Regidrago, you're beating everything else. Like I think Lost Box farms the Roaring Moon deck. Your matchup into Iron Thorns isn't bad, because I think the strategy is you just build up a Blood Moon or Saluna with 5 energy, and then you just sit there and attack over and over with it as they 3-shot you, as you just switch card, heal it and stuff. So I think Lost Box is still like actually not a bad deck. It's maybe underrated. I predicted there would be one in top 8. That prediction did not age very well, but it's interesting to see no Lost Zone, like one in day 2. And funny enough, they streamed a Giratina Lost Zone mirror on stream. I think it was round 6 in the tournament. Day 1.
That's right. I think Giratina Lost Zone was actually really well positioned. If you look backwards at this, I mean, it might have been Giratina's time if a couple more top level players, I mean, they're all top level players are at the World Championship, but if a couple more players put some time into Tina, it could have been time. I know you're listening out there, Dan, and shout out to you for being a Tina main. But as far as decks go, we saw Raging Bolt do well, and it had a phenomenal matchup to the best deck in the room, which was Regidrago, and shout out to you. But what we didn't see is the other dragon Pokemon, which was Dragapult. And
Mm-hmm.
now I know, LDF, you've been playing a lot of Dragapult yourself at locals and things like that. And we didn't even see a Charizard Dragapult. We didn't see a Zatu Dragapult. Where were the Dragapults?
Yeah, so there was 2 Dragapult on day 2.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, they were very near the bottom of day 2. There was
Yeah.
one Dragapult. It was like a Dragapult Bibarel deck.
Mm-hmm.
And then somebody did make day 2 with Dragapult Charizard. It was like kind
Okay.
of the Tord build with like a
Yep.
few new cards. But yes, there was only 2 Dragapult in day 2, and they didn't do that well. I think the
Mm.
main reason why Dragapult flopped, bad Regidrago matchup, and
Yeah.
you can't take a bad Regidrago matchup. And
Right.
I love Dragapult. Even I acknowledge that Dragapult, it just doesn't have the juice right now. If you're going to play Dragapult, just play it with Regidrago because it's just a
Right.
better Dragapult deck at the moment. Now,
Right.
Dragapult is still a very strong card in theory, but yeah, it just unfortunately wasn't its tournament. Dragapult Charizard is still a really cool deck, and honestly, I maybe would have considered playing it to the World Championships had I gone, and I wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
be convinced into any other deck. I
Right.
maybe would have locked in Dragapult Charizard just because I'm so familiar with the deck. But I'm not surprised to see the deck flop. Dragapult is just really weak right now. It might not
Right.
be too bad into like Miraidon and Moon. But like the Drago matchup just being really weak. It's just kind of the same logic behind playing Lost Box. It's like I'm not surprised to see these decks not see that much play because their
Mm-hmm.
Drago matchup is too weak. And I feel like if you're gonna play a stage 2 deck that loses to Regidrago, I actually at that point would just play Charizard because
Right.
Charizard is just an overall stronger deck than Dragapult right now. So I'm not surprised to see Dragapult flop. Just unfortunately, just not Dragapult's tournament to shine. Not going to be bad going forward. I still think there's going to
Right.
be room for Dragapult at some time in the future. But yeah, with all the Drago going around, it's just you can't compete with
Yeah.
Regidrago. It's just
Yeah.
a really weak matchup.
And some honorable mentions that we did have close
Yeah.
to the top there. We did have Bennett EX show
Mhm.
up, and we had Chen Pao show up. So those are interesting, spicy picks for Worlds that did okay. They did
Mhm.
pretty good. But just running down again, the top 8, we had Iron Thorns winning it. We had the Roaring Moon. We had Miraidon, 2 Regidragos there, Raging Bolt, and then 2 more Regidragos. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how it all panned out. And one thing that panned out that we'll talk about now is a little bit of the controversy surrounding the top 8 here. And
Yeah.
one, I want to preface this with I love everybody that's on my team. I will stand up and applaud anybody that's on it, and they all belong to be there. We know the handshake heard around the world here at Worlds. I personally want to take this time to apologize on behalf of the Shuffle Squad. Ian knew that was a mistake. Did eventually apologize. I mean, not eventually, immediately apologized for what had happened. And then, we're looking at the entirety of the event here, and Ian had such a great run. Obviously, cut short for a minor mishap. I think I understand. I have kids of my own. It is a tournament that's viewed worldwide. To children, and taken out of context, it did obviously look a little inappropriate for any motions, but we also have to, being internet bound, always assume the worst. Ian has never put forward any connotation of being a bad human being. Very supportive, and even after the fact, supported Fernando the entire run through, back through the top 8 to win the entirety of the event. So it is very unfortunate, and my heart goes out to Ian for everything that happened after that event had occurred at the World Championship. So it is something that we could have seen Ian take down the entire thing. Zach also had a phenomenal run on TSS, just bubbling right out of money at the top here. Did get right outside of that top 32 cut, which was really unfortunate. But Zach did a great job and has done a great job all season. Honestly, all of these players definitely deserve to be up there. Even you're looking at somebody like Jesse Parker, who had played the game for a very long time, but until recent seasons has not seen the same success or same amount of success that Jesse has had too. So, shout out to everybody who did, one, make it to Worlds, and two, made it all the way through. There was a couple of other controversial moments that happened. We saw some cheating via a cell phone camera.
Yeah,
at one of the
someone got
tables,
caught palming a card.
palming a card, which is, I think, absolutely uncalled for.
No, definitely, yeah.
Um, and then, there are some other issues of blatant time bending on stream that were not even accounted for on top. So I feel like there's some things that maybe TPCI can do some investigating on, to make tournaments better for the future. And that's my 2 cents here. As manager owner of Shuffle Squad. Um, Again, I don't condone any actions that my players had done. Speaking about Ian, to do again on stream, and it's something that we've taken care of here on the back end. TPCI has put their 2 cents in on, and at least allowed Ian to not be disqualified, which was great. But there are many other things that should pose for disqualification as far as my concerns. And then also the readjustment for top eight. I know a lot of people were upset about. It is understandable about being upset on what happened, but it is at this point part of the rules. Maybe those rules will change. TPCI usually does addendums to their rule set from time to time, and maybe this is just something that will assist with that. We just changed our tournament format, right? And that's something big that has happened. And we obviously changed, our championship ramp up and how that works. So there are changes coming to the Pokemon game, right? TPCI is doing a good enough job right now to get us there. And so, I mean, that's my thoughts on the whole situation. LDF, did you have any other thoughts to add on to that?
Yeah, at the end of the day, like I feel bad for all the parties involved. I feel bad for Ian. I feel bad for Jesse. I feel bad for Fernando.
Mm-hmm.
Because Fernando, his world's title is going to be looked at as potentially illegitimate now, which is just so unfortunate.
Right.
Jesse potentially got robbed out of being able to play in the finals on an undefeated streak. Ian, of course, the whole thing with him. Just it's such an unfortunate situation for sure, and it sucks that it had to play out like this. Like TBCI definitely could have gave Jesse the win in top four. I'm sure they wanted to stream the top four for content, so they instead probably just chose that, hey, Fernando is going to be given the win, because Ian like already did his winner's interview and everything at that point. So it's just an entire mess of a situation, and I just feel really bad for like everybody involved. Like I really do feel bad for Fernando, because Fernando like he's a young player, first time winning the world championships, huge deal, winning it with like such an oddball type of deck, and it's going to be completely tainted now because of this whole situation.
I know.
And yeah, it's just such I don't know, my opinion is it's just so unfortunate to see everything play out, and I just feel really bad for all the parties involved. And hopefully this doesn't happen again, and hopefully if anything similar does ever happen, Pokemon can figure out the best solution so that we are not put in this type of mess again.
Right, exactly. And that's all we can hope for, is that the cleanup comes in, and things are made right going forward. There's a lot of things that are not happening correctly, and we're probably one of the best competitive TCGs out there, and I will stand by that. We have one of the best communities backing us. And we have a lot of staff members that are phenomenal, that help make our day-to-day competitive Pokemon lives even better. So shout out to everybody involved in making competitive TCG a real thing worldwide, and all the players that try their best and their hardest to do what they love every single day. So that's my 2 cents. Now we'll move on to some more positive things here. We did get some announcements at the end of the World Championship, and one of the biggest things were the new trainer cards. Now, I played for a very long time, and a long time ago we had trainer cards in the Gym Heroes series, which came out, I think it was even Wizards of the Coast back then, before Pokemon took charge of printing the cards. But we now see the return of trainer cards in TCG, and they even hinted at a couple other things. But let's talk about these trainer cards. Did you get a chance to look at all of these cards yet, LDF?
I have. They do look pretty interesting. The Zoric especially, I think, got a lot of people excited. Trade is coming back. Zoric is like a hybrid of Zoric GX and Mew VMAX. I think, well, I mean, we haven't seen the rest of the Ends cards yet, but if, N has some pretty good Pokemon, I think that Zoric EX is probably going to be a pretty good card within the format. It doesn't need
Yeah.
2 Dark Energy, and Dark Patch
Right.
is most likely going to be rotating by the time it comes out. But there are cards
Mhm.
like Janine, Secret Technique in the format, so
Yes.
I
Yeah.
think there is some potential for Zoroark to see play. We just have to see the rest of the cards revealed. It's too early to call the card
Exactly.
broken because there's not a lot of context behind what the card can work with. But
Right.
at the face value, these new trainer cards look pretty exciting, and I'm pretty excited to see what these will have in store for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And the card, if those of you who are watching or listening don't know, ends Zoroark EX is a 280 hit point Pokemon that is a stage 1. And it has the ability trade, which is just like the old Zoroark GX of the Sun and Moon format. Exact same text on there. And then it has Night Joker, 2 Dark Energy, like we are talking about, and you can choose one of your benched Ends Pokemon. There was the Ends Reshiram that was also announced here, that for a Fire Lightning, you can use Powerful Rage that does 20 times the number of damage counters on the Pokemon. So obviously, with Ends Zoroark EX being a bigger Pokemon, you can use things. I think there was a Rigid Band that goes on stage 1 Pokemon, and you can make that even bigger and do some really good output there. But it has Virtuous Flame on that Reshiram too, that is 170 damage. Now we also look at other cards here. We saw the Lily's Clefairy EX, which is a basic Pokemon, and this one says it has the ability Fairy Zone that has the weakness of each of your Dragon type Pokemon in play is now Psychic. And then it has Full Moon Rondo for Psychic Colorless. It does 20 plus 20 more damage for each benched Pokemon. Now, with the introduction of Stellar Crown in another month or so, we're going to have cards that extend your bench. So this could potentially be really, really good in a lot of decks, especially when Regidrago seems to be one of the best decks in the format currently. We might be able to put Regidrago out of business, especially being able to turn a non-weakness Pokemon into one that does have a pretty relevant weakness in the format right now. There's a lot of good psychic Pokemon out there. Obviously, we look to splashing this into something like a Gardevoir. And this doesn't have to be in the active either. So I think that that's a really good card. 190 hit point, 2 prize Pokemon. Not the best. But hey, it is still something, and I can see it being used in a couple other decks.
Exactly.
The other one, we have Marnie's Grimmsnarl EX, that this one has a really cool ability. It is a stage 2, and also, who doesn't love Marnie, right? We got Grimmsnarl here coming out of the Sword and Shield era. It has the ability Punk Up, and it reads, when you play this Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon, you can search your deck for up to 5 basic Dark Energy and attach them to your Marnie's Pokemon in any way you like. So that one's pretty cool. It's got Shadow Bullet, does 180, and it does 30 splash damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. So if we could see something like, I still think that we have a Weezing in the format right now that relies on Dark Energy. We could see that being played with some other Marnie's Dark Pokemon or other Marnie Pokemon. We don't have anything else other than these teaser cards out right now. So a lot to contemplate and think about. But really cool cards. I honestly love this extra add-on for cards. The metric of trainer cards coming back is really nostalgic for me too, so I really love that. And then they kind of bridged the gap and hinted at Team Rocket coming back. They had the little Rocket R at the end, so I'm really excited. Maybe we'll get a Team Rocket redo set like we had Celebrations. That could be cool.
I think we might. It's possible.
It's definitely possible. We just did the 25th anniversary series, which had some really relevant cards, right? They keep doing these mini sets. So if we got a mini set with Team Rocket and bringing that back, now that we're bringing back the trainer cards, I think there's a world in the future where I can play some real retro looking decks in the upcoming few tournaments. Now, we're going to kind of turn the tides here, because speaking of things in the future, we did get a huge announcement, and that was for Worlds. So LDF, I want your first thoughts on the Worlds announcements for not one, but 2 Worlds.
Yeah, so we got announcements for Worlds to be in Anaheim and then in San Francisco. I think they had revealed San Francisco because it got leaked.
You're right, right.
That's most likely why they revealed that. They were most likely not going to reveal San Francisco if it wasn't already leaked. But
Right.
Anaheim, nobody knew where next year's World was going to be. There was a lot of predictions. It was going to be in Germany, or it was going to be somewhere like Washington again, or it was going to be in Paris. I heard some rumors that we might get a Berlin Worlds very soon. But I definitely think that nobody was expecting Anaheim.
No.
We've had Anaheim before, right?
Yeah, I
It
believe
was
so.
2015, I think it was.
Yeah, I know it's been on the West Coast a couple of times. Obviously, you know, we're looking at Hawaii. This is the third time in Hawaii that we've been there, and we've had some California Worlds before, but twice in California was definitely unexpected.
Pretty crazy, yeah.
You know, I don't mind it because it's on U.S. ground, so it's not so hard for me to get to.
That's,
you know,
yeah, I was thinking that too. Yeah,
relatively
for like me, it's not as bad.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you get a passport, you come across the border, you do your thing. I'm just, you know, flying straight over. It is a longer flight, but I love California. I love hot weather.
Never been there before, so I want to experience it.
It's very cool. It's super fun. I think Anaheim's really cool, and then San Francisco, also really good to have a regional there. You know, we got the zoo is not too far away. You know, got all these other attractions nearby, so I think that that's really fun. One big takeaway I had, and that we haven't had for quite some time, is we got the dates for these worlds. That was the most exciting thing, is now, because obviously I ran into issues with the dates for the past couple worlds post COVID. You know, with that being said, having dates for 2 worlds in a row is just insane to me. I think that this is the coolest part of the whole announcement. Now I can plan my entire year. I don't have to take vacations that week. You know, I can spend some time in California, get a vacation out of it. I think this is the best thing. What do you think about having Worlds dates so early? What do you think TPCI was doing over there where they're like, oh, yeah, let's plan it out?
Yeah, so they didn't announce the Hawaii dates for a very long time, and that got a lot of people really upset because Hawaii's expensive.
Right.
So Pokemon most likely did this because they saw the outcry from the community complaining about the Hawaii dates being so long to be revealed, and they're like, well, we should probably, you know, fix that and just flat out reveal the dates. And I'm happy they did this because yes, it gives people the opportunity to plan ahead. It, you know, can save a lot of people money. Flights are not going to be as expensive if you book them super early in advance, and we know the dates. Like, you could probably realistically buy your flight to Anaheim right now, and you would save hundreds of dollars, which is pretty insane. So I'm very happy that they revealed the dates. That's definitely a huge W. And I know some people on Twitter have complained about the dates, or not the dates, the locations being in California back to back instead of, you know, in Germany. Considering we just had London, Japan, and Hawaii, which is a pretty good lineup of world's locations, and then, you know, going to California twice in a row. Some people are like, really? Like, but at the end of the day, I think it's fine. Again, like you said, I like California. I've never been there before, but I do want to go there one day, and this now gives me an excuse to go. I still want to go to LA. I never went to LA regionals. I still want to go to LA one day. So maybe, you know, maybe we can make a trip out of Anaheim to LA. I don't know how far that is, but still something I'd like to go to.
Yep. And you know what? Sacramento's not too far from there either, and Sacramento's happening, so lots of LA trips. So that's the one thing I was kind of, you know, shaking my head at, is that it is the World Championship, and you know, having it in the same place multiple years, you know, yes, I'm entitled enough to live in the United States where I get to go in the same country back to back for the World Championships 2 years in a row. Well, technically 3 because Hawaii. But now looking at it at the broad scheme of things, it is a more centralized part of, you know, where the World Championships is held. A lot of players from Japan, easy travel into California, vice versa, you know, things like that. Maybe the European players, it's going to be a little bit difficult for a couple of years. But, you know, you make a vacation out of it. We had to do it for other worlds in the past. And I'm sure that after this, we'll change it up again, and maybe there's contracts involved. I'm assuming that's really where their mind was at, because they did, just like the ICs, they had the contracts multiple years in a row. We look at EUIC still in London, same spot. Brazil is going to have LAIC, and now we're going to have back-to-back New Orleans NAICs. So I think that it kind of goes hand in hand with what they're trying to do, with get these elongated contracts with places to help keep, again, the costs down. Staffing won't be as much of an issue. There's all things on the back business end that are non-Pokemon related, I guess, that the people don't see, but I can see from a business perspective on why they would do something like that. But anyway, all in all, I'm super happy about all the ending ceremony announcements that happened at the World Championship for sure.
Yeah, I think it's all cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So what a wild Worlds it was, and I hope that you at home enjoyed it as well. And let us know what you think about everything in the comments below. We're going to sign off here. We're going to give some shout outs. LDF, do you want to give any shout outs before we sign off on this episode here?
No, just get a shout out to the Shuffle Squad as always, and shout out to GameStop. We got some big things coming, so definitely get hyped for that.
Absolutely. So pay attention to all of our social media for all things Shuffle Squad that are about to happen very soon. So keep an eye peeled for that. And you can also check the description of our YouTube video for all the links for all of our sponsors here, where you can save some money on awesome products, whether they're Pokemon products or products for in real life. Just go down and use any of the affiliate links and or discount codes to help do that. We've got things like PTCGL Store, Advanced GG, Ultimate Guard, Kayfabe cards, and many, many more down there. So you're going to want to check them all out. I'm PJ here with LDF, signing off on the Shuffle Squad's Shuffle Pod Worlds Recap episode. We will catch you next time.
Peace.
Want to support the Shuffle Squad? Be sure to check out all of our sponsors in the description to pick up Pokemon TCG singles, sealed, and PTCG live codes. You made it to the end. Thank you so much for watching this entire video from the Shuffle Squad. Honestly, from the bottom of our hearts, we appreciate each and every person that supports our content, watches what we have going on every single day, every single week, even from time to time, and continuously allows us to have a forum to project our creative content towards the Pokemon TCG community. So if you haven't already, be sure to give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and even leave a comment to help boost the YouTube algorithm. That being said, we'll catch you with our next video. Thanks again. Take it easy.